Hello there, you're following World News Program. I'm Yasin Rikti, and here's what making the headlines. Dozens have been killed and injured in ongoing Zionist strikes across Lebanon, with the army reporting 2 soldiers killed. Strikes hit Tyre as Hezbollah announced operations against occupation forces, while Zionist troops crossed the Litani River for the first time since the escalation began, while UNIFIL expressed deep concern over the escalation in southern Lebanon. Axios reports a conditional US-Iran understanding awaiting Trump's approval. Iran accused the US of violating a ceasefire, while its Revolutionary Guard claimed control of the Strait of Hormuz and a strike on a US base. The US said it intercepted 5 Iranian drones, and Pakistan's foreign minister will visit Washington for talks on ending the conflict. WHO is expanding Ebola testing in the DR Congo, with Tedros Ghebreyesus announcing a visit. The outbreak is straining Bunia's economy, while Kenya has approved a US quarantine facility plan in Nairobi to help combat Ebola. Welcome back to the details of our program. First up in our news, 19 people were killed and dozens injured in Zionist airstrikes across southern Lebanon, according to Lebanon's health ministry. Officials said strikes in Tyre, Sidon and Adlun hit a motorcycle, a residential building and a passenger bus and a car. Among the dead were several children, while dozens more were wounded. Rescue teams also recovered 3 bodies from beneath the rubble in Sidon early Thursday.
We were sleeping at 2 a.m. We woke up to a very powerful strike. We looked around and found the rubble on us, stones from the strike because it was nearby and directly facing us. My mother was sleeping here, a stone this big in front of her, and here and there was my son. The window was blown out and all the glass over there shattered. And as you can see, the whole house is damaged. The walls turned black from the shoot. Thank God no one among them was injured.
Hezbollah said its forces carried out several operations against Zionist targets in southern Lebanon on Thursday. In a statement posted on Telegram, the group said it launched rocket attacks on Israeli military vehicles and armored unit command positions in the towns of Al-Qusayr and Zawtar al-Sharqiyeh. Hezbollah also claimed it targeted an Israeli Merkava tank in Kantara using an attack drone, saying the strike scored a direct hit. Zionist authorities said their forces had crossed the Litani River, moving beyond the previously declared zone of operations in southern Lebanon. Zionist media citing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reported that occupation forces carried out attacks in Beirut and the Tyre area while advancing across the river. Netanyahu also said the military would act to eliminate Hezbollah's drone threat. The Zionist entity has intensified its military campaign in Lebanon, expanding strikes and ground operations in the south while issuing new evacuation warnings for Tyre. The aggression has fueled fears of a wider conflict as operations move beyond the Litani River despite ceasefire efforts. More details with Marwa Belwar.
In the most significant escalation in months, the Zionist entity is pushing military operations deeper into Lebanese territory, reviving memories of the 1982 invasion, crossing beyond the Litani River, a line long used by the occupation as justification for its attacks on southern Lebanon. The offensive has continued despite the fragile ceasefire announced in April, ongoing negotiations involving Washington and Tehran, and repeated calls from the United Nations and UNIFIL forces to prevent further escalation. The Zionist entity's airstrikes and artillery shelling have targeted villages south of the Zahrani River, along with major urban centers including Nabatia and Tyre, where evacuation warnings and sustained bombardment have forced more civilians to flee from towns and villages now reduced to rubble. adding to the growing displacement crisis across the country's south. Leaving thousands dead and wounded, the strikes have also expanded beyond the southern front, reaching eastern Lebanon, the western Bekaa Valley, and Beirut's southern suburbs, areas increasingly treated by the occupation as open military targets amid the entity's effort to use military pressure and large-scale destruction to weaken a resistance movement that continues to reject its presence on Lebanese territory. In another development reflecting an attempt from the Zionist occupation to reshape the region's security landscape, the strategic southern city of Tyre has come under intense air and ground bombardment, coinciding with the occupation's announcement that its forces had crossed north of Litani River, an effort to disrupt and increase pressure on Lebanon's political scene. While reviving memories inside the Zionist occupation of earlier military setbacks, its withdrawal from southern Lebanon in May 2000 and its disappointment in the July 2006 war continue to weigh heavily on the occupation's strategic calculations.
UN peacekeeping forces in Lebanon, UNIFIL, voiced deep concern over the latest escalation in southern Lebanon. In a statement posted on X Thursday, UNIFIL said hundreds of thousands of civilians had been forced to flee their homes without warning, warning that the situation further threatens regional stability. The force also reported monitoring 670 projectiles on Wednesday, the highest daily count since April 17th. Hamas reaffirmed its full solidarity with Lebanon, saying people in the south have the right to resist Israel and defend their land and sovereignty. In a statement, it said ongoing Israeli escalation in Tyre and surrounding areas is a blatant violation of Lebanese sovereignty and a direct attack on civilians.
The occupation's threat to expand its aggression in southern Lebanon and its attempt to terrorize residents and drive them from their homes are a continuation of the policy of aggression and collective punishments it pursues against the peoples of the region. These are documented crimes that require an urgent international stance to stop them and hold those responsible accountable. In the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, we renew our full solidarity with the brotherly Lebanon, its people and its resistance. We also hail the steadfast peoples of Lebanon and Palestine who stand firm in the south, and we affirm the right of the people of the south to resist the occupation and defend their land and sovereignty.
After months of heightened tensions, Washington and Tehran are cautiously reopening diplomatic channels, with reports indicating discussions over a temporary framework aimed at preventing further escalation and stabilizing the situation. The report by Nabil Khazini.
What appeared at first to be a limited diplomatic contact between Washington and Tehran is now being seen as a possible step toward easing tensions in one of the region's most fragile relationships. Media reports say American and Iranian negotiators discussed a proposed memorandum of understanding aimed at reducing escalation, although the plan still reportedly requires Donald Trump's approval before moving forward. The talks comes as tensions remain high over regional security, sanctions, and Iran's nuclear program, with both sides appearing keen to avoid a wider conflict in the Middle East. At the same time, Iranian officials accused the United States of violating fragile ceasefire understandings, following reports of renewed military activity near strategic waterways.
About what the actions of Americans and what they are saying, what matters to us are the official messages we receive. And naturally, Iran will not accept anything that is not in line with our interests and those of our country. And this is the reason it has taken a few days to make sure everything is in line with our interests. Naturally, the American side needs negotiations. We continuously receive their messages, and we want an agreement that is aligned with national interests.
Despite the accusations, however, diplomatic communication has continued, suggesting that both Washington and Tehran are still trying to keep negotiations alive. For Washington, the negotiations represent an attempt to contain regional instability while preserving strategic pressure on Tehran, particularly at a time when multiple conflicts across the region are already placing significant strain on international diplomacy. But beyond the political statements and carefully managed public messaging, the broader reality remains clear. Both sides appear aware that continued escalation carries risks neither may be fully prepared to control. And in a region where temporary understandings have often collapsed under renewed tensions, the challenge now is not simply reaching an agreement, but determining whether this fragile diplomatic opening can survive the pressures surrounding it.
Iran on Thursday condemned what it called US ceasefire violations following overnight strikes on Bandar Abbas in southern Iran. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai said Tehran would defend its sovereignty and criticize US threats against Iran and regional countries, while also expressing solidarity with Oman over tensions surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. Iran said that any powers that have used the Strait of Hormuz in ways that threaten coastal state security must be held accountable. Ali Bagheri Kani, a senior official at Iran's Supreme National Security Council, said on X that Tehran seeks a fair regional order based on rejecting domination and strengthening trust and cooperation. He added that Iran is ready for constructive dialogue and sustained cooperation with responsible regional countries. The United States has warned it could impose sanctions on Oman if it cooperates with Iran on managing the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said in a post on X Thursday that Washington would not tolerate any attempt to establish a transit fee system in the Strait of Hormuz, adding that any party involved could face sanctions. US President Donald Trump said Wednesday he is not yet satisfied with an agreement with Iran, adding that the United States is not discussing easing sanctions on the country. Speaking to reporters at a cabinet meeting, Trump said Iran is very determined and eager to reach a deal, but has not done so yet.
And we have the strongest military anywhere in the world, as you know. You saw what we did with Venezuela. That worked out very quickly, and we're doing really equally as well with, but again, people don't want to write about it, with Iran. Iran is very much intent. They want very much to make a deal. So far, they haven't gotten there. We're not satisfied with it, but we will be. We will be either that or we'll have to just finish the job.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio reiterated Washington's rejection of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons, saying some progress has been made in talks with Tehran. He also warned that other options remain available without providing further details.
The bottom line is Iran's never going to have a nuclear weapon. And if recent events have done anything, it's just remind us once again that they are the world's leading sponsor of terrorism. And they can never have a nuclear weapon. Now, the President's preference, Mr. President, your preference has told us repeatedly, is always to negotiate these things and to figure out if you can have agreements. Diplomacy is always the first option.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas warned that continued US conflict with Iran serves no one's interests. Speaking ahead of an EU foreign ministers meeting in Cyprus on Thursday, she said the Middle East remains between war and peace, noting that regional partners say a US-Iran deal is close but not yet finalized. She also cautioned that ongoing tensions, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz, could have serious global economic consequences and threaten freedom of navigation.
On Iran, the Strait of Hormuz remains caught in a dangerous grey zone between war and peace. There is now a tenuous diplomatic push underway to extend the ceasefire and reopen the strait. But any first phase agreement between US and Iran must be followed by deeper talks about the nuclear stockpile, but other critical issues for regional security. The EU can contribute with technical expertise when it comes to nuclear talks, for example.
Health sources in Gaza said hospitals received the bodies of 16 civilians and 39 injured people over the past 48 hours following Zionist airstrikes on several areas of the territory. The Gaza Health Ministry added that 922 Palestinians have been killed and 2,768 injured since the ceasefire took effect on October 11th. A Palestinian man has died from wounds sustained earlier in a Zionist strike in central Gaza, according to local Palestinian sources. Media reports said the man was injured 2 days earlier when an Israeli drone targeted the Al Zuwaydah area in central Gaza. The development comes amid continued Israeli air and artillery strikes on several parts of the Strip. Pilgrims in Mecca continue the stoning of the Jamrat in Mina on Thursday during the first day of the days of Tashriq. After completing the sacrificial rites, they will continue the rituals over the coming days before concluding Hajj with the farewell tawaf in the Grand Mosque. Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune spoke by phone with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, exchanging Eid al-Adha greetings and wishing prosperity for both nations. They also discussed strengthening bilateral cooperation following President Tebboune's recent visit to Turkey. Several Sudanese civilians were killed and others injured in a drone strike by the Rapid Support Forces targeting civilians in Al Tina, North Darfur. Local media said the attack hit a gathering in Kazan Bassau, killing 5 people, including 3 children, and injuring 4 others. The Sudanese army said it repelled a fierce attack by the Rapid Support Forces on the Amoura station in the Blue Nile state. In a statement on Thursday, the armed forces said units from the 4th Infantry Division pushed back the assault and recovered 4 operational combat vehicles. The World Health Organization said it is working with the medical research body in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to expand Ebola testing capacity and help contain the outbreak. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said on X that scaling up testing will strengthen laboratory networks, provide real-time data, and help quickly identify confirmed cases to save lives. He also said he will travel to DRC to support response efforts, expressing confidence in managing the outbreak. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said he is traveling to the Democratic Republic of the Congo to support efforts against the Ebola outbreak. In a post on X on Thursday, he called for collective action, saying he will stand with WHO teams, partners and health workers. He added that Kinshasa has overcome Ebola 16 times before, and the 17th will be no exception. A deadly Ebola resurgence in eastern DRC Congo is raising regional concern as authorities struggle to contain the outbreak amid conflict and displacement. More than 900 suspected cases linked to the Bundibugyo strain have been reported, with overcrowding and limited healthcare access hampering response efforts. For a report with Usama Yadi this time.
The resurgence of Ebola in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo is raising alarm among health authorities, humanitarian agencies, local communities, and even neighboring countries as the outbreak spreads across conflict-affected provinces, worsening an already fragile humanitarian situation. The WHO says the outbreak has been linked to more than 900 suspected cases, over 100 confirmed infections, and around 220 suspected deaths in Congo and neighboring Uganda.
Together with the DRC government, the UN and its partners continue scaling up the response to the ongoing crisis. and also, as we mentioned last week, to address the broader humanitarian and health needs of the affected communities. Funding remains urgently needed, as well as sustained and safe access, so that responders can be protected from the Ebola virus, so that they can provide protection and care to affected communities.
At the Kigonzi displaced persons camp near Bunia, fears of infection are growing as overcrowded shelters, poor sanitation and shortages of basic supplies create ideal conditions for the virus to spread. Humanitarian workers say the camp's difficult living conditions are making prevention efforts increasingly challenging. Meanwhile, the outbreak has also triggered a surge in demand for locally made hand-washing stations in the eastern city of Bukavu. Artisans across the city have reported a sharp increase in orders seeking preventive hygiene equipment.
We're manufacturing hand-washing stations to help fight diseases like Ebola. This was announced by the authorities. That's why we are receiving orders to manufacture hand-washing stations from NGOs and other people who then resell them.
The epidemic has now spread beyond the Ituri into North and South Kivu provinces, including Bukavu, intensifying concerns over regional transmission. Beyond the public health emergency, the outbreak is beginning to take a heavy economic toll on eastern Congo. Traders and residents in Bunia say tightened border controls and transport restrictions are disrupting commerce and threatening livelihoods.
We cannot do our business like before. We are forced to send money to Uganda so that someone buys for you and sends it to you at exorbitant prices. And we are not satisfied. The authorities must find a solution for the population of Bunia. We risk all becoming thieves and criminals if we cannot do business.
Health checkpoints have multiplied across various regions as officials attempt to slow the spread of infections in areas already destabilized by conflict and displacement. As health workers race to contain the outbreak, residents across eastern Congo face mounting uncertainty, balancing fears of a deadly virus with the economic hardships caused by containment measures.
Kenyan authorities have granted the United States written approval to establish a quarantine facility for Americans potentially exposed to Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. According to U.S. officials cited by Reuters, the approval allows Washington access to land at an airbase in Laikipia, central Kenya. The national football team has resumed its training sessions in preparations for the friendly match that will oppose it to the national team of the Netherlands in anticipation for the 2026 World Cup. The national team's training session, scheduled for next Sunday at 5 p.m. at the Nelson Mandela Stadium in Baraki, Algiers, will be open to the public and the press as part of preparations for the 2026 World Cup, June 11th to July 19th. The Algerian Football Federation, FAF, announced on its official website on Tuesday, before heading to the United States, the Greens will play a friendly match against the Netherlands on Wednesday, June 3rd at the Rotterdam Stadium. They will then face Bolivia in their final preparatory match on Wednesday, June 10th in Kansas City, USA. This is the end of our news bulletin. Next is the special coverage on the latest developments in the Middle East.